top advisors have been saying this week about taking on ISIS? Here they are.
This is an organization that has an apocalyptic end-of-days strategic vision, and which will eventually have to be defeated. To your question, can they be defeated without addressing that part of their organization which resides in Syria? The answer is no.
We're actively considering what's going to be necessary to deal with that threat, and we're not going to be restricted by borders.
Senator, you've been around Washington for a while. Help us understand what's going on here when some of the president's top advisors are so far out in front of where he is on ISIS.
Well, one hopes that they are, it's a precursor to the president making an announcement of a new approach, and all of us are appreciative of the president's comments about the tragic death of James Foley, and what the administration people are saying, Hagel and General Dempsey. But so far they have not laid out a strategy. The president has got to come forward with a cohesive, comprehensive strategy, not only in Iraq, but also in Ukraine, also in other parts of the world. This is an administration, which the kindest word I can use is feckless, where they have not outlined a role that the United States of America has to play, and that's a leadership role. No more leading from behind. No more don't do stupid stuff. No more tell Vladimir that I'm going to be more flexible if I am reelected, when I'm reelected. The United States, the president has to understand that America must lead, and when America hasn't, a lot of bad things happen. This is not like the earthquake in San Francisco. All of this could have been avoided, like leaving a residual force behind in Iraq, and obviously the challenge is now much greater than it would have been when the president made the decision not to leave a residual force in Iraq, among other things.
All right, Senator, you just heard Jack Keane lay out a very ambitious plan, an economic plan, a political plan, a military plan, thousands of advisors. Looks like it could go on for months, if not years. How confident are you, based on the comments made this week, that President Obama will decide on a full-scale attack against ISIS in both Iraq and Syria?
I do not know, nor do I know whether, incredibly, we're still not providing weapons and intelligence information to Ukraine while they're being basically cross-border invaded by Russia. I don't know, but I don't think his advisors would be that far out front if they didn't have some confidence. But also, Chris, let me just say, the president's got to talk to the American people. You were raising the question earlier, what will Congress do? It depends on the leadership of the President of the United States. Yes, we're, quote, war weary. Everybody understands that. But there's no doubt about this British young man and the 100 Americans that are already over there and the thousands of Europeans who are been radicalized, who will come back to attack us, and that's the view of our chief intelligence people.
Let me pick up on that. Will, if the president does launch the kind of campaign that Jack Keane was just talking about, will the president have to go to Congress to seek another authorization for the use of force? And, looking to your part of Pennsylvania Avenue, how certain are you that Congress will approve it, given the fact that Congress has not yet approved the extra $500 million to aid the Syrian rebels?
The reason why Congress hasn't approved the $500 million extra aid, no one's told us what it's going to be used for except for, quote, counterterrorism. The President of the United States has to articulate the challenge, what we need to do to meet it, and describe exactly to Congress what those missions are. And unfortunately, so far, he seems to be strangely detached, and Americans don't believe that he is certainly leading in a way that they can have confidence that we will reach the conclusion, which is the defeat, not stopping, but the defeat of ISIS, who are a direct threat to the United States of America.
Senator, I think it's fair to say that you were one of the few lonely voices to talk about the threat, the existential threat from ISIS, for months. Horrific as it was, why did it take the beheading of that American journalist, James Foley, for this administration to start talking, at least the administration, if not the president, to start talking not about containing ISIS, but defeating it?
I think that the terrible beheading was sort of the catalyst on what was already brewing out there. Look, whether it be in Ukraine or whether it be in Syria or whether it be in Iraq, there was a growing recognition of the threat. And by the way, as General McCain said, there's no boundary between Syria and Iraq. One of the key decisions the president's going to have to make is air power in Syria. We cannot give them a base of operations, and we've got to help the Free Syrian Army. I am heartbroken, Chris, about what has happened to the Syrian people, and a lot of that is due to our total inaction, and it's going to be one of the more shameful chapters in American history.
But Senator McCain, if General Keane is right, and it's going to take thousands, he said, thousands of U.S. soldiers in support situations, not in combat, but thousands of U.S. soldiers on the ground, and it's going to take months, if not years. I know a lot of folks watching this interview right now are thinking, wait a minute, we saw this in Iraq, we saw this in Afghanistan, years of U.S. involvement, trillions and thousands of American soldiers in blood and treasure. We don't want to do that again.
Well, we don't want to have the war won as it was in Iraq and then lose it by not leaving a residual force. And the same thing will happen in Afghanistan if we don't have condition-based presence. And that doesn't mean, as General Keane said, these are support troops. Although there will be some Americans in danger, particularly our special forces people. But look at the alternative. And that's what has to be explained to the American people. And I believe the American people will follow. But even I have to be convinced that there is an overall comprehensive strategy, which, and by the way, Lindsey Graham and I will make repeal of defense sequestration as our first goal, hopefully in September. But the point is that the president has to lead, and the president can change. Jimmy Carter changed after Afghanistan. Bill Clinton changed after Srebrenica. George W. Bush fired Rumsfeld and got us back on track. Mr. President, don't be ashamed of reevaluating your view of the role of the United States in the world, because we have shown over the last 6 years exactly what happens when we don't lead and create a vacuum.
Senator, we got less than 2 minutes left. I just want to turn quickly. You have mentioned it to Ukraine. The NATO says that Russian forces have been firing artillery at Ukraine, both from across the border in Russia, but also from inside Ukraine. We've also, and we got it up on the screen, those hundreds of Russian trucks supposedly on a humanitarian mission who crossed the border from Russia into Ukraine without Ukrainian support. What should President Obama do about that?
First thing we should do is provide intelligence and arms to the Ukrainians who are outgunned. I mean, it's incredible that we won't even give them sensitive intelligence so they can plan better. The second thing is, again, appreciate Vladimir Putin for what he is. And that is an old KGB thug that's bent on restoration of the Russian Empire. And understand that our European friends are not going to do much. Look at it from Vladimir Putin's point of view, what he has paid for with the absorption of Korea and the keeping eastern Ukraine unsettled, which is his goal. Look at the price that he's paid for it. Europe needs to be energy independent. Senator Hoeven, Senator Barrasso, and I have put forth a plan. Within 2 years, we can deliver natural gas to Europe.
Senator McCain, obviously a lot to talk about. Thank you so much for coming in today, sir.
Thanks for having me on.